a Chinese state-owned construction firm won a $320 million contract in June 2025 to build a new deep-water berth at one of the most strategically positioned ports in the Western Hemisphere. Not in Panama, not in Colombia, in Jamaica. The United States government made no public statement about it. That same month, the Jamaican government broke ground on a major terminal expansion, committed to relocating a domestic aerodrome to Freeport land, and launched the largest special economic zone ever attempted in the Caribbean. 3 separate projects, all confirmed, all moving at the same time. The scale of what is being built along Kingston Harbour right now, the combined weight of public capital, private investment, and foreign engineering contracts, is not widely understood outside the island. This video examines what Jamaica is constructing, who is financing it, who is building it, and what it means for the region and for the diaspora communities who have a direct stake in whether it succeeds. Jamaica has 14 seaports, 3 container terminals, and a natural harbor ranked 7th largest in the world. Its position on the map places it 32 miles from the major Panama Canal trade routes, at the intersection of the north-south and east-west shipping lanes that carry most goods moving between Asia, Europe, and the Americas. That geographic advantage has been described as Jamaica's potential for decades. Potential is a word that implies something has not yet happened. What is happening now is infrastructure, concrete, contracts, and capital. To understand where the port is going, the starting point is 2016. The Jamaican government transferred a 30-year operating concession over the Kingston Container Terminal to CMA-CGM, the 3rd largest container shipping company in the world, headquartered in Marseille, France. This was not a sale of the asset, the government retained ownership. CMA-CGM acquired the right to operate and invest in the terminal under a long-term concession structure, and over the 9 years that followed, more than $450 million flowed into the port. The harbor channel was dredged to 14.5 meters, sufficient depth to accommodate the largest post-Panamax container vessels operating today. Quay walls were rebuilt. Operating systems were modernized, cranes were replaced. By 2023, the Port of Kingston had climbed to 81st in the world in the Lloyd's List Global Port Rankings, one of the most widely referenced benchmarks in the shipping industry. A top 100 port in the Caribbean serving an island of fewer than 3 million people. Prime Minister Andrew Holness addressed the Jamaican Parliament and stated the results directly. The Port of Kingston is now globally ranked among the top 100 ports in the world. Since 2016, under a 30-year concession agreement with the Kingston Freeport Terminal Limited, over $400 million of investment with advanced geopositioning technology, new cranes, and upgraded infrastructure, we have increased cargo volumes in our ports by over 50%. We have increased employment by over 53%. By 2025, that volume growth figure had passed 60%. The port processed roughly 3.03 million 20-foot equivalent units, TEUs, in that year. More than 8.4 million individual container movements were recorded at the Kingston Container Terminal in a single year. To be precise about what that figure represents, every time a container is offloaded from a ship, processed, and reloaded onto a different vessel heading elsewhere, that counts as a movement. 8.4 million of those in 1 year. At one port, 88% of all cargo moving through Kingston's main container terminal is transshipment. Jamaica is not primarily exporting things it produces. It is functioning as a regional sorting hub. Ships arrive, containers are redistributed to smaller vessels or onward ships heading to different destinations, and the vessels depart. Jamaica earns fees on every container that moves through, every crane lift, every day in the yard. The transshipment model is a legitimate business. It generates real revenue and real employment. But it also makes Jamaica's port economy structurally dependent on decisions made in corporate offices in Marseille, Hamburg, and Geneva. The companies that control global shipping lanes can redirect those lanes. They can determine that a different port better serves their routing requirements. And when they do, 88% transshipment dependency becomes an exposure. The Caribbean Information and Credit Rating Services, CARICRIS, addressed this directly in a 2025 report. It concluded that the extent to which Jamaica's port investments translate into sustained growth will depend largely on global trade flows and shipping line decisions, factors outside Jamaica's control. The Jamaican government is not unaware of this. It is precisely why the Caymanas Special Economic Zone, addressed in detail later in this video, is the centerpiece of the broader program. The transshipment dependency can only be reduced by developing significant domestic export value, goods manufactured or processed in Jamaica that ships take out, not just sort and redistribute. Prime Minister Holness made the point at the Caymanas SZ groundbreaking in July 2025 with a single sentence. You can have 1 million ships coming here, but if they are not being filled up after they have unloaded, you have lost half of the potential of your port. The program now underway is an attempt to address both sides of that equation simultaneously. The following sections examine each of its major components. The Westlands expansion. $80 million Kingston Freeport Terminal has a geography problem. The city of Kingston has grown around it on 3 sides. Expansion is not possible in most directions. To the west of the terminal, however, there is land, 15 hectares, now leased from the Port Authority of Jamaica to CMA-CGM's operating subsidiary under a fresh agreement signed 2 weeks before the groundbreaking in July 2025. Those 15 hectares will increase container storage capacity by 25%. On a terminal already processing more than 3 million TEUs annually, that is not a marginal adjustment. The project involves moving more than 730 cubic meters of soil, installing LED lighting, adding new cranes, and deploying 14 hybrid straddle carriers, the equipment that moves containers within the storage yard. More than 450 Jamaicans will be employed across the construction and operational phases, with training provided for 600 operators. A new automated cargo gate system will be installed to accelerate the processing of domestic cargo, the roughly 12 to 15% of port volume representing Jamaican imports and exports. For a Jamaican business waiting for a container of raw materials or equipment to clear the terminal, the automated gate reduces that process from days to hours. PAJ President Professor Gordon Shirley said the expansion will allow Kingston to capture cargo currently being routed to competing ports. Ships that are choosing Caucedo in the Dominican Republic or Cartagena in Colombia or Freeport in the Bahamas rather than Kingston, because Kingston lacks the available space. The Westlands addresses that directly. Holness committed at the groundbreaking to a second phase of 15 additional hectares once the first phase reaches capacity. His projected timeline for that, 5 years, he said it directly. Within 5 years, the first phase of the Westlands will be taken up. The second phase, not yet publicly costed, will need to be in planning before this one is complete. At the same event, Holness announced the relocation of Tinson Pen Aerodrome, a small domestic aerodrome adjacent to the port boundary, to Norman Manley International Airport. Marcus Garvey Drive, running alongside it, will be rerouted northward. The land freed between the current port boundary and the road will be incorporated into port operations. Holness described the outcome plainly. The port will grow without constraint once this is complete. The Westlands development, the aerodrome relocation, and the road rerouting together constitute the largest single land release operation in the history of Kingston Harbour. The Czech contract, $320 million China Harbour Engineering Company, was awarded the Kingston Port Container Terminal Yard Phase 1 project on the 20th of June 2025, 11 days before the Westlands groundbreaking. Contract value, $320 million. Construction period, 25 months. The project was tendered by Kingston Freeport Terminal Limited under an engineering, procurement, and construction model, meaning Czech carries full responsibility for design, supply, and construction. China Harbour Engineering Company is a subsidiary of China Communications Construction Company, CCC, a majority state-owned enterprise of the Chinese government. Both CCCC and Czech appear on the United States Department of Commerce's entity list, sanctioned for their construction of artificial islands in the South China Sea. Czech is not a company without Caribbean precedent. It built a $458 million highway in Jamaica in 2017, financed by the China Development Bank, in exchange for 50 years of toll revenue collection. The company has an established track record of major infrastructure delivery in the country. What is different about the Kingston Port contract is its scope and precedent. According to a July 2025 report in the Chinese business intelligence publication Saitao, drawing on Czech's own disclosures, the Kingston project is the first time a Chinese company has served as general contractor for the upgrading of a core port in the Caribbean. Czech will build a new 800-meter deep-water berth and an automated container storage yard. 30% of all project work will be subcontracted to Jamaican companies. 200 Jamaican technicians will be trained through the project. The World Bank, in a separate assessment, concluded the project will improve Jamaica's logistics efficiency by 25% and reduce annual logistics cost by approximately $40 million. The Czech engineering team made two decisions specific to the Caribbean operating environment. The seismic rating of the new wharf structure was set at 9 degrees, above standard construction thresholds, to account for hurricane conditions. Millimeter-level accuracy in installing the large caisson forming the berth foundation will be achieved using China's Beidou satellite positioning system. The Center for Strategic and International Studies published a report in June 2025, No Safe Harbor, evaluating the risk of China's port projects in Latin America and the Caribbean, which documented Chinese firms' deep integration into the physical infrastructure of the region's maritime economy. The report raised specific concerns about CCC, noting that even commercially structured subsidiaries could potentially serve broader strategic interests. The Czech project at Kingston was referenced in that analysis given the port's proximity to the Panama Canal, the U.S. East Coast, and the primary east-west shipping lanes. No formal U.S. diplomatic objection to Jamaica regarding the Czech contract has been publicly confirmed. Washington, as of the research conducted for this video, issued no public statement about the award. Whether the Czech contract represents a straightforward commercial infrastructure arrangement or something with broader strategic implications is a question on which this video takes no position. What the contract unambiguously represents, regardless of how it is framed, is the single largest individual construction award in the history of Kingston Harbour. When the Czech terminal yard and the Westlands expansion are both complete, Kingston's annual throughput capacity is projected to reach 3.2 million TEUs, above the 3 million processed in 2025, with further capacity for growth. The Super Post-Panamax crane's $50 million, a port's throughput capacity is ultimately determined by its cranes. The deepest berths and the largest yards have no operational value if the equipment cannot match the scale of the ships arriving. In October 2024, Kingston Freeport Terminal launched a $50 million crane modernization program. The central delivery of that program arrived on the 6th of October 2025. Two new Super Post-Panamax quay cranes. KFTL already operated 14 Super Post-Panamax cranes. These two units represent the updated generation of that fleet. Super Post-Panamax designation refers to cranes capable of reaching across the full beam of the widest container vessels in service. Ships too wide to transit the original Panama Canal locks, built to pass only through the expanded locks completed in 2016. These are the vessels now arriving regularly at Kingston. When one of these ships offloads at the existing terminal, the volume of containers it generates is sufficient to create significant congestion across the entire facility. Prime Minister Holness described the operational reality after being taken to the top of one of the port's existing cranes to observe conditions directly. He said, "When they explained to me the constraints that they have, because now they're receiving the largest ships in the world, they're receiving the Post-Panamax vessels, and when one of those containers are offloaded, it will create significant congestion on the existing facility." Holness stated separately that the 60% volume growth recorded by 2025 exceeded original projections. The current expansion program is responding to a port that outperformed its own plans. The Westlands adds yard space. The Czech contract adds berth length and storage infrastructure. The cranes add the lifting capacity to match. All three components are addressing the same underlying constraint from different angles. Kingston Wharves Limited, $120 million. The port transformation program is not limited to the government-managed Kingston Container Terminal and its CMA-CGM concession. Kingston Wharves Limited, a private Jamaican-owned port operator, runs separate facilities from Port Bustamante, adjacent to the main terminal. Kingston Wharves does not primarily handle transshipment. Its business is domestic cargo, the goods Jamaicans import and export. Vehicles, perishables, break bulk freight, specialized cargo. Over the past decade, domestic cargo volumes through Kingston Wharves have grown by over 260%. Transshipment through its own facilities has grown by 319%. Motor vehicle movements have grown by 164%. CEO Mark Williams has published a 3 to 5 year strategic capital plan of $120 million. The plan includes redevelopment of Berth 6, a new multi-level car park within the port boundary, Phase 2 of the Ashenheim Road Integrated Logistics Complex, a 300,000 square foot facility that was fully subscribed by blue-chip tenants before Phase 1 was even finished, an integrated logistics facility in Western Jamaica, and continued expansion of the Global Auto Logistics Center. Kingston Wharves currently handles more than 120,000 vehicles per year for both the domestic Jamaican market and regional redistribution. A Norwegian pure car carrier uses Kingston Wharves as its Caribbean hub. The company serves more than 20 port states globally. Williams stated, "We are a conduit for economic growth for Jamaica. Ports act as a catalyst for economic growth for countries like Jamaica. We provide Jamaica a platform to reach the global community. $120 million of private Jamaican capital, committed by a private Jamaican company, on top of every government and foreign-funded investment already described. This is the private sector component of a program that is not waiting for government to lead every step. The Kaimana Special Economic Zone, the Westlands expansion, the Czech Terminal Yard, the Crane Fleet, and the Kingston Wharves program all address the same operational objective: improve the port's capacity to move containers faster, store more of them, and handle larger vessels. They make the existing business more efficient. The Kaimana Special Economic Zone is a different kind of investment. Its purpose is not to improve what the port does. Its purpose is to change what Jamaica exports. The SED broke ground on the 29th of July 2025 on a 700-acre site of former agricultural land along the Mandela Highway in St. Catherine, immediately adjacent to Kingston. The site is the closest significant logistics land to a major Caribbean port anywhere in the region. Phase 1 covers 200 acres at a cost of $8 billion Jamaican dollars, approximately $52 million US dollars, over 4 years. The Port Authority of Jamaica will lead the initial 50-acre development, with the immediate priority of securing an anchor tenant. The broader CSS master plan encompasses more than 10,000 acres in a planned community framework. The industrial logistics component directly relevant to port activity covers 583 acres. Industries the zone is designed to accommodate include cold storage, warehousing, third-party logistics, e-commerce fulfillment, light manufacturing, agribusiness, value-added food processing, pharmaceutical production, business process outsourcing, information technology services, and engineering. Any company locating within the zone receives a 50-year tax-free operating environment covering both profits and dividends. There are no restrictions on foreign ownership and no foreign exchange controls. Implementation runs across 52 months in 3 overlapping phases. Phase 1 is land preparation, raising the terrain 2.5 meters to meet hurricane resilience standards, estimated at 24 months. Phase 2 delivers roads, drainage, and core infrastructure over 36 months. Phase 3 constructs mixed-use commercial and industrial buildings over 30 months. The phases run concurrently rather than sequentially. The Port Authority of Jamaica is financing the initial development in part through asset divestments on the local Jamaican Stock Exchange. This broadens public participation in the project's ownership structure and reduces dependence on a single financing source. The project has cross-party support. Opposition spokesman Anthony Halton, whose own party had championed an earlier version of the scheme, stated, "We have to get started on this journey. My disappointment is the length of time it has taken. It should have started from 2013. Halton did not question the project's rationale or direction. His objection was to its timeline, 12 years delayed from when he believed it should have begun. Bipartisan agreement on the destination of a major infrastructure program, with bipartisan frustration at its pace, is not the usual condition of Caribbean governance, it is worth noting," PAJ Chairman Alok Jain said at the groundbreaking. "We are laying the foundation for a new engine of economic growth for Jamaica. We want to position Jamaica as the 4th global logistics hub, identifying Singapore, Dubai, and Rotterdam as the 3 existing nodes. Those are not Caribbean comparators. They are the global benchmarks, the 3 established nodes of the international logistics chain. And Jamaica's Port Authority chairman is using them as the reference point for what the CSEZ is designed to build toward. Whether that ambition is achievable requires an honest accounting of the numbers. Singapore processes over 37 million TEUs per year. Rotterdam handles 15 million. Dubai handles approximately 14 million. Kingston currently handles 3 million. Achieving throughput parity with those established hubs would require a tenfold expansion of container volumes, a fully developed industrial export ecosystem, and decades of sustained investment and tenant recruitment. That is not a 10-year objective, it is a 50-year one at minimum. What the infrastructure decisions being made right now, the Westlands, the Czech berth, the CZ, the Tinson-Penn relocation, the crane program represent is the foundational capital stock of a logistics economy. These are the investments that make the 50-year objective possible to pursue. They do not guarantee the outcome, but without them, the outcome is not available. Regional competition. Jamaica is not operating without competition. The Dominican Republic is investing heavily in its own port position at the same time. In May 2025, DP World signed a $760 million memorandum of understanding with the Dominican government. The agreement covers two parallel investments, $380 million to expand the Port of Caucedo's container capacity, and $380 million to develop an adjacent free trade zone. The combined objective is to raise Caucedo's annual throughput from 2.5 million TEUs to approximately 3.1 million TEUs, with new quay construction, breakwater development, modern ship-to-shore cranes, and automation upgrades. DP World is a Dubai-based global port operator with established operations across 5 continents. Its integrated model, port infrastructure plus adjacent free trade zone plus industrial tenant recruitment, is structurally comparable to what Jamaica is attempting with KFTL and the CSE. The Dominican Republic brings a labor pool of 5.3 million people and DP World's global operating network. Jamaica brings a natural deep-water harbor, a geographic position closer to the Panama Canal, and CMA-CGM's global shipping line connections to more than 400 commercial ports worldwide. They are competing for the same strategic prize, the primary logistics node of the Caribbean basin. Both are investing. Both have committed capital. Both have the physical infrastructure to make the case. The transshipment market across the region is not growing fast enough to support 5 major hubs, all expanding simultaneously. Kingston, Caucedo, Cartagena, Freeport, and Colón all have active expansion programs underway. Some will capture business that others lose. The investment decisions made between now and 2030 will substantially determine the outcome. Cartagena in Colombia currently ranks 4th in the Caribbean by throughput. Freeport in the Bahamas ranks 5th. Both are also active in infrastructure development. The competitive environment is not changing, it is accelerating. Kingston's current response is to advance every component of its program simultaneously rather than sequentially. The Westlands and the Czech terminal yard address berth and storage capacity. The CSZ addresses export value. The crane program addresses lifting efficiency. The Tinson-Penn relocation removes land constraints on future growth. All of them are in motion at the same time, financed by different partners, executed under different contractual structure, but converging on the same strategic objective. The World Bank and the Kingston Waterfront, the Kingston Waterfront Improvement Project, Kiwi, sits outside the port infrastructure program proper, but it is directly connected to the port's long-term operating environment. In October 2024, the World Bank signed a $12 million agreement with the government of Jamaica for Phase 1 of the project, running from 2024 to 2029. Phase 2 carries an estimated budget of $28 million and runs from 2025 to 2030. Together, the 2 phases will deliver a multi-use public waterfront along Kingston's historic shoreline, incorporating bicycle paths, sports infrastructure, energy-efficient buildings, flood-resilient landscaping, and renewable energy installations. The combined program is projected to benefit more than 700,000 Jamaicans. Finance Minister Nigel Clark stated, "Lowering our debt is not an end in itself. It is a means to improving the quality of life for Jamaicans. Alongside income growth, we must create environments that support a high quality of life, and public spaces like this are a crucial part of that vision." The logic behind including a waterfront park in a port development strategy is operational as well as social. A logistics hub that degrades the surrounding urban environment through congestion, industrial noise, Restricted waterfront access makes it harder to attract the knowledge economy workers and business services tenants that a special economic zone requires. Singapore and Rotterdam maintained urban investment in parallel with port expansion precisely because the workforce that a world-class logistics economy needs does not locate itself in cities that are purely industrial. The Kingston Waterfront Program is the government's attempt to preserve the city's livability as the port's industrial footprint grows. PM Holness described a further dimension of this at the Caymanas groundbreaking. He noted that private investment is already arriving around Kingston Harbour without government solicitation. The example he cited was a German ship repair facility, the first of its kind in Jamaica, an independent private investment attracted by the port's growing traffic and the maintenance demand it generates. Ships require servicing. Ship repair generates engineering employment. Engineering employment requires training institutions. A growing skills base makes the CSZ more attractive to manufacturing and logistics tenants. That sequence, port growth generating ancillary private investment which generates employment, which builds the workforce that attracts the next tier of investment, is the compounding mechanism that Singapore and Dubai both relied on over decades. Jamaica's program is structured to trigger the same sequence at compressed speed, using the simultaneous deployment of capital across the port, the SEs, and the waterfront as the catalyst. The Port Authority of Jamaica's capital expenditure budget for the 2026 to 2027 financial year is 10.5 billion Jamaican dollars. At current exchange rates, that converts to approximately $67 million in a single year, a meaningful annual capital spend, but a figure that refers to one institution's one-year budget, not the total program. The confirmed active investment stack across all projects described in this video, the CMA-CGM concession cumulative spend since 2016, the Czech construction contract, the Westlands expansion, the Crane program, Kingston Wharves' strategic capital plan, and the World Bank waterfront commitment totals over $1 billion in current cycle committed capital. When the full CSZ program is factored in, 700 acres developed over a 50-year horizon, combining public capital, stock exchange financing, and the private investment the zone is designed to attract. And when the downstream business activity the government projects will flow from it is included, Jamaican officials have described the total economic transformation in terms of value reaching multiple billions of US dollars over its full life cycle. That is the honest framing of the headline. This is not a check written for $10 billion. It is a transformation program, multi-partner, multi-phase, multi-decade, whose projected cumulative economic impact reaches that scale. For a country with a gross domestic product of approximately $16 billion in 2024, a logistics program of this scope is not a supplementary infrastructure project. It is an attempt to alter the structural composition of the Jamaican economy. The Diaspora stake: if the program works, Jamaica's economic profile changes, not incrementally, structurally. A country that currently earns most of its foreign exchange from tourism and remittances becomes a country that earns it from logistics services, from pharmaceutical production, from precision manufacturing, from BPO employment, from ship maintenance, from cold chain distribution. These are not tourism jobs. They are not the kind of employment that relies on diaspora transfers to supplement household income. The Jamaican families in London, in New York, in Toronto, and in Miami who send money home to support relatives, they are not sending it because Jamaica lacks people willing to work. They are sending it because the jobs available at home have not historically paid wages that match the cost of living aspirations of a globally connected population. A logistics hub economy generates a different quality of employment. Supply chain managers, port operations technicians, pharmaceutical plant workers, e-commerce fulfillment supervisors, engineering roles. These positions exist on a different pay scale from front-of-house tourism employment. That is the direct material stake the Caribbean diaspora has in whether the CSZ fills up, whether the anchor tenant is secured, and whether the port investment translates from throughput growth to export value creation. The downside scenario is equally specific. If the CSZ does not attract private sector partners at scale, if the anchor tenant is not secured, if DP World's Caucedo expansion draws the transshipment business that Kingston was projecting, if global carrier routing shifts away from Jamaica again, then the 88% transshipment dependency remains. The port volumes stagnate or decline, and the Diaspora continues sending remittances. The island remains economically beautiful and structurally fragile. Both outcomes are possible. The infrastructure being built now determines which one is more likely. It does not guarantee either. Credit ratings and the Vodham Dip, the Port Authority of Jamaica, received ratings of Carrier on the international scale and JMA Plus on the Jamaican national scale from Caribbean Information and Credit Rating Services in March 2025. The reaffirmation was accompanied by a stable outlook, and Carrie Chris noted the ratings support PAJ's continued access to funding for expansion. These are not the ratings of a financially distressed institution. They reflect an organization managing its balance sheet responsibly while deploying significant capital. Carrie Chris also documented a volume contraction. Jamaica's ports handled roughly 3.03 million TEUs in 2025, down from approximately 3.17 million the year prior. A small reduction, but a real one. In the same year, the government announced the most ambitious port investment program in the island's history. The port's actual measured output went down. The contraction did not result from local operational failure. It reflects precisely the structural vulnerability that Carrie Chris and other analysts have flagged. When global shipping patterns shift, when carriers in Marseille or Hamburg or Geneva make routing decisions, Jamaica cannot prevent the consequences. Transshipment volume moved away. Jamaica could not hold it. That is the documented cost of 88% transshipment dependency when the external environment moves unfavorably. The government's programmatic answer to that contraction is the CSZ. The objective is not simply to restore the volume that was lost. The objective is to reduce the proportion of port activity that is purely transshipment, cargo sorting with no Jamaican value added, and replace some of it with cargo generated by domestic production. Goods manufactured in the CSZ, processed in the CSZ, assembled in the CSZ, and exported through the KFTL terminal. That substitution is what converts port throughput from a foreign-controlled variable into a domestically anchored one. The mission is confirmed. The groundbreaking has happened. The contracts are signed. The cranes are operational. The environmental clearances are in place. The financing structures are committed. The open question, the most consequential one, is whether the CSZ can attract private sector partners of sufficient scale and quality to generate meaningful export volume before the competitive window narrows. Whether a global manufacturer, a major pharmaceutical company, or a Tier 1 logistics operator will evaluate a 50-year tax-free operating environment on 700 acres adjacent to a top 100 global port, 2 days from the Panama Canal and 4 days from the U.S. East Coast, and commit. No confirmed anchor tenant had been publicly announced as of the research for this video. What exists in Jamaica's favor is substantial. The geographic position is not reproducible. The CMA-CGM concession connects Kingston to more than 357 shipping lines serving 420 commercial ports. The legal system operates in English under common law. The labor force is English-speaking. The tax incentive structure is competitive against any comparable zone in the region. The ESG infrastructure, underground cabling, micro-renewable energy grids, climate-resilient architecture, is designed to satisfy the environmental, social, and governance requirements of institutional investors and publicly listed manufacturing companies. JAMPRO, the Jamaica Promotions Corporation, is conducting international marketing of the CSZ to potential tenants. The Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, under Senator Auburn Hill, is leading government-level investor outreach. A single-window permit system is being built into the zone's regulatory architecture to reduce administrative friction for companies establishing operations. Singapore and Dubai did not fill their economic zones in 5 years. They built the infrastructure, sent the trade missions, iterated on the incentive structure, and sustained the outreach over decades. Jamaica is running the same process. The CSE is a project with a 50-year tax incentive precisely because the government understands that credible investors need a credible, long-term framework, not a short-cycle scheme. The Aggregate program, the full scope of what is confirmed and underway along Kingston Harbour, is best studied as a cumulative list. The CMA-CGM 30-year concession with more than $450 million committed since 2016. The Czech construction contract for $320 million. Delivering an 800-meter deep-water berth in 25 months. The Westlands expansion at $80 million. adding 15 hectares and 25% additional storage capacity. The $50 million Super Post-Panamax crane program, delivering 2 new units in October 2025. The Tinson Pen aerodrome relocation and Marcus Garvey Drive rerouting, removing future land constraints. The Cayman Special Economic Zone, breaking ground on 700 acres with a 50-year tax-free mandate. Kingston Wharves' $120 million private capital plan. The World Bank's $40 million Kingston waterfront commitment. The Port Authority of Jamaica's $10.5 billion Jamaican dollar capital budget for 2026 to 2027 alone. All of this is confirmed. All of it is current. None of it is projected or aspirational. These are signed contracts, announced budgets, and completed groundbreakings. The Caribbean has not seen a logistics program of this concentration and simultaneity before. The American position: the United States government has not published a formal response to Jamaica's port transformation program. There is no announced U.S. strategy for partnering with Jamaica on regional supply chain infrastructure. There is no U.S.-backed logistics development initiative in the country of comparable scale to the Czech contract. The Center for Strategic and International Studies raised the concern in its June 2025 report. Multiple analysts have noted the gap, but Washington's documented public posture on Jamaica's port transformation, across all the investment announcements, groundbreakings, and contract awards reviewed for this video, is an absence of public comment. The United States historically engages most visibly with the Caribbean in response to acute instability, political transitions, migration pressures, security incidents. The opportunity to engage Jamaica as a partner in building the regional logistics infrastructure that American supply chain resilience frameworks identify as strategically important has a narrowing window. The Chinese engineering firm is already on site. The concession agreement with the French shipping company has 16 years to run. The economic zone is breaking ground. Jamaica did not wait for a preferred partner to offer what it needed. It assembled what was available: a French shipping operator, a Chinese construction firm, a World Bank facility, a domestic private company, and its own public balance sheet. The result is a program of a scale and seriousness that has no precedent in the recent history of the Caribbean logistics sector. Prime Minister Holness said at the Cayman's groundbreaking, "For decades, we have spoken about Jamaica's potential to become the logistics hub of the Americas. Today, I can say with confidence, we are no longer imagining the future, we are building it. The port volumes will either grow from here, or they will not. The Caymanas SEZ will either attract the anchor tenants it needs, or it will sit partially occupied. The Czech contract will either remain a commercially bounded engineering arrangement, or it will acquire the geopolitical dimension that analysts in Washington are already discussing. The Dominican Republic's Caucedo expansion will either intensify the competitive pressure on Kingston, or it will demonstrate that a larger regional logistics market benefits multiple hubs. None of those outcomes is determined yet. What is determined, in concrete and steel, in signed agreements, in dredged harbor channel and committed capital, is that Jamaica is no longer treating its geographic position as a theoretical asset. For a Jamaican watching this from London, the question is whether a relative back home will be working in a world-class logistics economy, or still relying on the transfer you send each month. For a Caribbean business owner assessing where to locate the next operation, the question is whether Kingston's infrastructure program produces the competitive advantages its government is promising. For anyone tracking the shift of manufacturing and logistics from Asia toward the Americas, which is already underway, Jamaica's position 2 days from the Panama Canal is not an abstract consideration. And for Washington, if it is paying attention, the deepwater berth is being built by a company that is on the entity list. The crane program is complete. The land has been cleared. The zone is breaking ground. The foundations are being poured.